Another thing Christians don't understand about their Bible is that the Gospels were not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All of the Gospels are anonymous, and scholars agree about this. Even your favorite scholar, Wes Huff, agrees on this
I mean, okay, yes, they were written anonymous, but okay, we'll keep watching.
point. They are anonymous Gospels, and the names were added later. Now, think about this for just a second. Who were Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? The followers of Jesus, these were regular people in that day. They spoke Aramaic, but the authors of the Gospels, these were educated people. They spoke Greek, and not just regular Greek, almost a poetic version of Greek. They were highly educated. These were not the disciples of Jesus, certainly not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John who wrote these Gospels. And why does that matter? It matters because it draws into question, were these actually eyewitnesses of these events, or did they hear it from someone else and wrote it down later?
So Robert here makes two claims. One, that because the authors didn't sign their name to the books, that we don't know who the authors are, and two, that because they were written in the Greek, the disciples couldn't have written them. But see, Koine Greek was the lingua franca of the Roman world. It was used in trade, government, and daily life. Many Jews, especially in cities like Jerusalem and Capernaum, would have spoken Greek in their daily life to interact with Romans and other foreigners. Not all of Jesus' disciples were illiterate fishermen. I mean, you have Matthew, a tax collector, a job that is required to have above average Greek literacy. John, well, he lived to an old age. He had plenty of time to learn. And Luke? Well, Luke was a physician, so he had to know Greek too. So I guess it depends on the standpoint of what a high level of education means to you. If you don't consider it a requirement to be illiterate for any one of those jobs, then okay, none of them were literate. Sure, we'll go by that standpoint. But even if that was the case, they spoke enough Greek to talk to people that knew enough Greek to write this down. The early church preserved their testimonies through oral tradition and trained scribes, which was normal for ancient world practices. But okay, you're saying, why wouldn't they write them in Aramaic instead of Greek? Well, because they were meant for everyone, not just Hebrew speakers. The gospel was designed to spread beyond Israel, to Rome, Greece, Asia Minor, Africa, all over the world, and Greek was the common language. Now onto the authorship idea. Now, in his comment sections, he says 40 years, 50 years after Jesus' death makes the writings that were written down folklore and mythology. Mark was written as early as 10 to 12 years after Jesus' death, and in ancient historiography, that is incredibly fast. For comparison, if we want to say 40 to 50 years makes something mythology and folklore, what about Alexander the Great? The accounts of him are written centuries after his death, yet historians, and I'm sure you won't, dismiss them as mere myth. And then let's talk about what's actually in the Gospels if you want to discredit it. Let's look at what's in it. If they were fabrications meant to deceive, they wouldn't include what they have in it. I mean, why would they include details that make the disciples look horrible? I mean, Peter, Jesus' closest follower, denied Jesus not once, not twice, but 3 times after he was arrested, and all of the other disciples abandoned him. And then get this, the first witnesses after Jesus' resurrection were women. Now you're probably saying, oh, look at this, a Christian patronizing women. No. You need to understand, at the time, women's testimony wasn't even valid in the court of law. Let me say that again. At the time, in the Roman world, a woman's testimony was not even valid. A woman could not testify against anything. A woman's word held no value. So why would you use a woman's word if your intent was to deceive? These are not the kinds of things you invent when you're making up a legend. It actually does the opposite of the time. Of the time, it hurts their credibility significantly. And that's not how myth-making works. They would have placed Peter or someone else at the tomb if it was a myth. So no, the language of the Gospels doesn't disprove their authenticity. In fact, their compensation in Greek and their prompt documentation strengthen their credibility. And just a bonus tidbit here, just to prove a little more credibility to the authors being who we think they were, Mark died around 68 AD. His book, written between 55 and 65 AD. John died somewhere between 90 and 100 AD. His last book, written somewhere between 90 and 100 AD. Those are just 2 examples. Good sir, I'm not even Wes Huff, and this information was quite easy to find. It seems you have a great head on your shoulders, but you're using it to find confirmation biases. And I respect the effort you put into your content, but false content is still false content. I hope you have a wonderful day, brother, and God bless.